Welcome to the show, everyone. This is the Voices of Healing podcast. I'm your host, Tina Clark. I'm a shamanic Reiki healer, and this podcast is all about finding holistic solutions to health challenges. So, hopefully, you'll find your solution to your challenge in one of these episodes. In today's episode, our guest is Chris Marhefka, and he is a nutrition and holistic coach. He's also a retreat facilitator, and he's going to share his own story of how his burnout led to an awakening. So, welcome to the show, Chris.
Thank you for having me, Tina. Excited to be here.
Yeah, so Chris is in Spain right now, so we're going international. And why don't you tell us more about yourself and your background?
Yeah, sure. I'll go with kind of all the way back. I mean, I was raised in a very lower middle class home in America, in Florida, actually. And, I got the usual programming of go to school, go to a good college, get a good job, and just work life away and make a lot of money, accumulate a lot of toys. And so I was on that path for the first, pretty much all the way through college. And then even right after college, I was in a finance job. And, the first thing that I would call intuition that I actually recognized was this day I was driving to a 45-minute commute. I was actually living with my parents at the time. I was 22 years old, living with my parents, and I was wearing this suit and tie going into what I thought was this prestigious finance job. And I was just miserable. I was driving in for this 7 a.m. sales meeting, doing something I didn't want to do. And I didn't feel I was actually helping people. And it just kind of all washed over me at once. And I realized I'm just not happy. Is this really the life I want to live for the next 40, 50 years, whatever it may be, 60 years? And so that day I made a decision. I quit that job, and I had no plan, had no idea what I was going to do next. And I had went to school for finance and business because I thought that's what you do to make a lot of money. And here I was, 22 years old, living at home, and really no plan. It was right after the 2008 financial crisis. So it wasn't a great time to be quitting your job and just fresh out of college. But it was the first time where I made a commitment to myself that I was going to follow what I would call my heart now, my vision for my life. I didn't have those words back then, but I just wanted to follow something that lit me up and got me excited. And at the time, the thing I was most passionate about was actually fitness and working out. And in college, I got really into it. I got into the science of it. I got into all sorts of training and was helping out friends and leading some group fitness classes and stuff. And I just loved it. It lights me up. And so shortly after that, I started a little fitness company, started doing some at-home personal training and running some group classes. And that grew and grew and grew. And that eventually became a gym that I opened up. And now fast forward, I'm making my way to 30 years old. I have the gym that I had for 10 years. I also opened up a healthy meal delivery company. We scaled it nationwide, and it was all started for the purposes of helping people. I wanted people to get healthy. I really believed that nature was our best medicine. And so the healthy meals were just all organic, farm to table, really quality stuff. And everything I was doing, it was I started it for the right reasons. I wanted to help people, and I wanted to be in service. And it was all really fitness and nutrition oriented all the way from the start. And then around this time, I started to experience a series. I didn't think it was a series at the time, but leading up to my 30th birthday, injury, sickness, and just all these things, this brain fog, and just it was kind of like this increasing, one of those roller coasters that are cranking you up to crank to get to the top. And the drop of that roller coaster was, for me, it was February 2016, and I was in the middle of a CrossFit competition. I was so intense back then. I was competing in CrossFit, I was competing in business, I was working 80 plus hours a week every day, training every day, and just so stressed, like beyond stressed, like the definition of overwhelm was me. And I was just mainlining stimulants to keep going. And I had this story about myself that I just had to work harder than everyone else and had to keep going and had to have it all together. And in this competition, I remember I was lunging with a barbell over my head. And then I started to get this like headache and this pressure in my head, and this competition's almost over. It's the last workout. And I just remember thinking, like, oh, I've been here before. I know how to push hard and everything. And then all of a sudden it got more and more and more like pressure. And then boom, grenade went off in my head. The lights went out, and it was, I remember coming to, and for the first time in my life, I was truly scared. I had never really felt that level of fear before because I had no idea what just happened. I had done everything I could to control my life, like grip so tightly to have control. And then this happened, and it sent me into a downward spiral over the next few months of fear, depression, anxiety, just cycling between all these different things because I didn't know what to do. And I went through, at this time, despite being so into the natural world and physical training, I still was really following like Western medicine. So I went down all the things. I got the scans, and I went through so many appointments, and no one could really tell me like what was happening. Like, oh, this result of this paper doesn't show anything. And I was like, well, I'm feeling it. And it wasn't just that moment. It was anytime I raised my heart rate above resting for the next few months, this headache would start to come on again. And it felt like this spider web from the base of my skull, from when my spine meets my skull. And it just would like wrap around. And then it would just feel like every heartbeat was getting hit in the back of the head with a baseball bat. It was so painful. It was 10 out of 10 pain. And, I did like a few months of just like sitting around and trying to figure it out. And I remember life really stopped for me. I couldn't work the way that I was before. I just had this constant headache. I was trying to pretend like I had it all together, but I didn't. I couldn't work out anymore because I couldn't raise my heart rate. So I just ended up, I was taking a lot of walks in nature back then, and I started finding things like mindfulness. And through taking a few yoga classes and going to some local community events, I started meeting people that were more in the holistic world. And so I started working with a chiropractor. I started working with a massage therapist and an acupuncturist. And I remember the first acupuncture session I had, it was like, I'm trying to think of like a great analogy for us. It would be like if there was a bucket of water and then you could just pull the bottom out, and it was like all the stress just flooded out of that bucket. And on my first session, I remember feeling like, oh, wow, I don't remember ever feeling this relaxed before. And then my first massage appointment, I cried, and I hadn't cried as an adult since my grandfather died. And it just, remember, I couldn't hold back the tears. And I just remember, so sweet, so loving, just like put her hand on my chest and just allowed me to cry and cry and cry it. And back then I had no idea what was going on. I had no concept of this. And so it really caught me all by surprise, but there was just like a really deep, certain part of me that just said, keep going, keep going, keep going. And so it was funny. I felt like I was split. The analogy that I used, it was like one foot was on one raft and one foot was on the other, and they were slowly drifting apart. And I was like making this split of my life, because on one side I was doing all this other stuff that was all new to me and it was helping and I was feeling great. On the other side, I was trying to pretend like I was still the same person, but I wasn't. It had changed me. And so these rafts were drifting apart and drifting apart and drifting apart. And that continued for, wow, about another 2 years until the next wake up moment that I had. And I'll pause there, because
Okay.
there's so many offshoots of the story. But yeah, that kind
Yeah.
of got me really started in my healing journey, and diving into things I never would have thought.
Yeah. I feel like there's a personality type, that is very ambitious and pushes yourself really hard. And there's consequences to that.
Mhm.
And your body basically said no.
Yeah, hard no. Hmm.
No. And so do you feel like there were some signs before that your body was telling you, let's talk about the body, because the body is
Yeah.
wise, and
Hmm.
um, that your body was saying, nope, this is not good for you. Nope, I don't
Hmm.
want to do this.
I'm laughing because they were looking back. They were loud and clear. I was waking up with pain every day. I had achy joints, everything. I had fractured my wrist, and I had sprained my ankle, and just all these injuries and all these things. Um, and then the lethargy that I was experiencing, and just all kinds of symptoms that I just pushed down. Honestly, it just kind of was like, okay. I remember at this time I was really into working out and CrossFit, and this is another sign itself. I started wearing all this protective gear. Okay, now I had wrist wraps. Okay, now I have these knee sleeves on. Okay, now I have a weight belt because my back is in pain all the time. And just all these things to try to compensate for what my body was obviously telling me. And the irony of all of this is, like, this is what I was doing for a living. I was training people in movement. Like, I could look at someone across the room and see exactly their movement pattern and like what they needed to fix a millimeter here and engage this muscle. But in myself, it was like I wasn't paying attention at all. And yeah, until I was forced to, honestly. I was forced to. Mhm.
Yeah, I kind of have a similar thing that happened when I used to work for the government, and I kept moving jobs and I kept getting worse and worse. And I wasn't having like physical symptoms, but I knew I was unhappy. And the very last one, I ended up with my appendix bursting.
Mm.
Yeah. And I ended up in the hospital for a week. And I'm not dumb. I was like,
Mhm.
I didn't say my body said no, which is, I think it did, but I said the universe is telling
Mhm.
me stop doing this.
Mhm.
You can't be doing this. And it's almost like a timeline thing, because at 30 you started having these
Mhm.
problems, and it's almost like, I'm going to get woo here, but like your higher self is going, you're 30 years old and there's something else that you want to do, and stop
Mhm.
doing this.
Yeah. Hmm. I really believe that as well. I just had my head down, completely blind to any signs, any signals. I wasn't listening to anyone at the time. I just thought I knew it all. Honestly, I thought I was always the smartest in the room, and it was just like I was just so blinded by everything. And yeah, it was the most humbling experience that I had had to date in my life at that point. And it was like, it was strong enough to where I couldn't ignore it anymore. And that's why I'm grateful for it. I can look back on it now and remember how dark and how miserable I was and how much pain I was in. But now I can look back and be grateful for it, because it did slap me in the face. It did
Yeah.
kick me in the pants, as my grandfather would say. Yeah. Hmm.
Yep, that's a exactly what it feels like.
Yeah. Hmm.
So what happened after that?
Yeah. So we're kind of fast forwarded to around 2018 or so. I'm now full split metaphorically. I've got my mind and my heart kind of over here, and I'm going through the motions over here in my past life. And it was causing just I couldn't work like both psychologically, but also I knew physically anymore. I couldn't work like I did, and those 2 years really showed up. It showed up in a lot of holes in my life and my business when I wasn't pushing that hard. So starting to have some relational issues, starting to notice that there's actually a lot of things that I'm ignoring in my marriage, holes in my business when I wasn't just the one staying up all night fixing things. And so things were starting to break financially, starting to lose money in the businesses, and just like everything was slowly crumbling. And it was like I couldn't do what I would have normally done, which is turn it up a little bit and hold it all together physically and forcefully. I couldn't do it. And so I remember I was at a business conference. This is one of the another kind of moment. I was at a business conference, and it was for health entrepreneurs, and I was invited because of our meal delivery company. And I remember going outside, and one of the guests, he was actually one of the presenters, was out there like shirtless, sun tanning, big smile on his face. Just, and this is like a business conference. People wearing like sport jackets, not super formal, but he's out there sun tanning on one of the breaks and super happy. And I walked over to him, and I was like, "Hey, man," I was like, "What's your deal?" Basically, I was like, "What's going on?" And he just gave me a really simple answer. He's like, I found happiness. I found what makes me happy, and I did this program, this like emotional healing work, and I think you should do it too. This was after like a little bit of conversation. He's like, you should check it out. And he also, I don't know how PG our conversation is, he also encouraged me to try psychedelics. And so those are the two recommendations he gave. And I followed the emotional healing path, and did a program, and really started to crack me open and emotionally places I'd never touched before. And ironically, my wife went through the same program. And what it brought up was all the things that I was ignoring both of us were ignoring. I'll be fair. Both of us were ignoring and weren't tending to for the entirety of our relationship, since we'd been dating since like 22 and she was 20 or something, right around there. And so all this stuff was coming up. And I was in a place where I just couldn't do the same life anymore. And so I actually decided to check out. At the time, I didn't know what else to do. I bought an RV, and we told our staff. We were planning for it. This wasn't like a surprise thing. We were planning for years, really, because I had never really taken a vacation. I had no time off, and I just had this dream for just some freedom in my life. I felt like I was in a cage, and I finally realized I had built the cage. And so I was just doing whatever I felt like I needed to do to get out of that cage. So I needed a physical space. And so we took this RV and took a few weeks, came back, and I was like, oh, wow, I want to go back. I want to go back again. So a few months, came back. And then finally we left in 2019 and started traveling the country. And this time didn't really come back. On that trip, decided to had more healing experiences and just more mind opening experiences that made me realize is like I'm actually done with that version of my life. And I didn't close it in the most mature way. I didn't know what else to do. We sold our house from the road, and I sold both of my businesses basically that way as well. Came back and signed papers and said goodbye and all that. But it was just that, just a little bit of space made me realize how unhappy I really was. And back then, honestly, I blamed all the external stuff. I was like, oh, it's because of this and because of this and because of the relationship. And so I felt like I needed to get space from it. And so that led to like the life crumbling down. And really at the end of 2019 was the real catalyst for like the whole next level. Like I thought I was good at that point. I was like, oh, I'm free. I'm good. I'm free. And then we, my wife at the time and I go to Burning Man, which is ironically happening right now.
Yeah, it is.
Yes, so many friends there right now. And we went there in 2019. And the day after Burning Man, my wife asked for a separation in our marriage. And that was like the Niagara Falls of reality finally hitting me. And it just all like everything emotionally opened up in me in that moment. And then it was a really hard journey. We had to figure out like the logistics of what that meant. And we had to, we had to navigate something that was a complete surprise. It was like completely to me out of left field because I was so blinders on. And
do you feel
yes,
like she was trying to tell you over time there was a problem or there are issues and you just didn't notice or pay attention to that?
Without, my first instinct is to actually say no. And it's only because I won't go too much into the personal dynamics, but we kind of had this codependent relationship where she was casting me as her father. And so I was like almost the authority in the relationship. And there was like this power dynamic. And obviously, some part of me loved it. And it felt good that I was like in this authority power role. And so she never really questioned anything about me or challenged me in any way in that sense. And I think she was doing the same thing that I was doing in regards to like the business and just like needing space and needing to eject to breathe. Because at the same time I was going through it, she was going through it too. So she was in her own process. And yeah, I think she was coming to terms with like these patterns that were playing it out. She didn't want it. I didn't want it. And we didn't really know how to, because we were trying to like navigate and break these patterns. And we had some coaches and mentors and things. And looking back, we were in the worst possible situation. We were in a 25-foot RV I had two big dogs. And so we're like tiny RV, dogs, stress. I'm trying to work from the road. And it was just like, and then all these things were coming up. And so it was like this pressure cooker. Yeah, I mean, it was one of those things where it was a whole relationship worth that started bubbling up in a matter of like weeks and months. And so it was a lot of tension. And I think that response from her was her like cry for help for herself and like doing the thing that she thought she could do, which is get a little breathing room. And and that sent us both on our separate individual healing journeys at that point, and brought up so much in me because that was the last thread of what was holding my idea of myself up. I had this idea of myself as like the good husband and hope to be a good father. At the time, I thought I was going that path, and good business owner and great friend and all these things. And the last one that was left was like this good husband ideal model that I was viewing myself as. And it just, with that conversation, just came crashing down, and had to face all the realities of the ways that I wasn't that. And I wasn't taking responsibility for my part in the relationship and how I was showing up. And yeah, so that was like the whole nother wave. when I,
Yeah, and you put yourself in difficult situations. Like, I mean, the whole
Mhm,
RV thing, and
mhm,
it can be fun, but it depends on what you need,
mhm,
like, or what your priorities are. I can see it being really fun and freeing, but I could also see it being kind of a drag, you know?
mhm. It was the perfect thing to bring stuff up, and if that's what needed to happen, it did it.
And I say
Yeah.
that travel in general
Mhm.
does that too.
For sure.
I had a
Mhm,
really good friend who passed away recently, um, but she would travel a lot, and I would ask her why. And she said, well, I'm getting older, and so I want to travel before I can't. But every time she traveled, it brought up all her stuff,
mhm.
which that's what travel does,
Mixes
you
it all
know?
up. Mixes up the
Yeah.
routines and the habits and the patterns, yeah. Mhm,
And it forces you to face your issues come up, when you
mhm,
travel and you're under stress.
mhm,
Travel is fun, but it's also stressful.
mhm,
You're in the airport, there's a million people, you're in a country that's very different from what you're
mhm,
used to, all of that. But yeah, and I learned from her that when you travel, get ready because
mhm.
your issues are going to come up.
Yeah, yeah, I know that well. We've been traveling a lot over the last 4 years. My now wife, spoiler alert, we did
Hmm.
end up getting divorced, and I met my now current wife a couple years later, and we have been traveling a lot. Part of ours was our path in that was we said very consciously like we both knew right away with each other. It was so different for me, and I'd done a lot of work on myself, and as had she, and we knew we wanted to start a family, and so we made a commitment to each other that we were just going to do us for at least a year and do everything that we wanted to do. So we just started writing out and doing all this, and that 10 plus years of me grinding, I hadn't really traveled much and I hadn't been out much, to be honest. And so she really encouraged me, like, whatever you want, like, we'll do it. So we started doing that. Um, and yeah, of course, now we're in Spain right now. That what I was going to say is that there is absolutely the stressful side of it, and the other side of that coin. What I realize is once you start practicing being with the stuff that comes up, what comes up also is an enormous amount of creativity. And there's like a new perspective on life when you're completely taken out of your normal ruts of how you do things. And so it's got both sides. And I realize I don't like moving around is the big thing. I don't mind being in new areas, but I have to settle. I have to like get all my
Hmm.
stuff. I have to settle, and I have to find the important parts of my routine anywhere I go. And that's what I do now. Mhm.
Yeah, and there's opportunities when you travel, or even you don't even have to travel, just put yourself in a new situation or be around different people. And there's opportunities to heal and release and all those
Mhm.
things. If you know how to do that, if you have
Mhm.
the awareness to do that,
Yeah.
and that's an amazing thing because I've experienced that traveling, and it's unbelievable. Like
Mhm.
once you face whatever issues it is and you're honest about it, and it can experience this amazing almost euphoria of release, and you
Mhm.
feel like a different person afterwards.
Yeah.
Like you're like,
Mhm.
what just happened?
Mhm. Yeah, honestly, that was my experience in that initial parts of the RV trips is like I felt a different person. And so it was like, oh, now I don't know how I can go back to being there was like all these different levels of oh, I'm a new person, and the travel definitely facilitated that for sure.
Yeah. So what's your takeaway from this entire experience, and what would you advise people? Because I feel like this path to success in America is really damaging. And I think you're a good example of that. And
Mhm.
I think I'm a good example of that too, honestly.
Mhm. Yeah, I fully agree with you. That is one of the biggest takeaways that I had from this whole journey was uh, as I started r- going through the process of removing the things that I thought was me that actually isn't, other people's stories and what I thought other people wanted me to be, and my parents' ideas about life. And once I started like really going through the excavation process of that, I started getting much more clear on what was actually important to me. And at the end of the day, what became so clear is I wanted to do purposeful work in the world. I wanted to help people. That was true throughout my whole life. I want to help people. I wanted to have a family that I loved and loved me, and a warm, loving home that I loved being in, like a family unit, and and a partner that was truly a partner, like a something that I don't know, like a union. I really thought that was important to me, and just to be happy, to live my life in a happy way. And nature was a big part of that. Really leaving kind of the technological city, fast paced life and realizing that I actually prefer living a little bit slower. And ironically enough, I'm more effective when I'm downregulated, and I'm much more loving, and I'm much more kind and patient, and makes me a better father and husband. And so, yeah, I started getting really clear on what was actually happiness to me, and then putting all of the, kind of like you said earlier, the personality type of like achievement and drive. And I started putting drive into the things that were on that list of what I cared about. So I put attention and energy into the things that I actually wanted. And that was a game changer. When I put, surprise, surprise, when I put my attention on something, it actually improved. And yeah, the takeaway, and this is just kind of like a a huge realization for me, combining the travel with the inner and healing work, is that America is stuck right now in this weird treadmill, this consumption, sickness, uh like materialistic treadmill that once you step off of it, it's mind blowing to look back. And I have this experience every time we travel back to the States. I look back, I look at how, I'll use an example. Like we're on a beach town here in Spain, and you can just look over the beach. There's multi generations. There's grandparents playing with little kids, and there's uh, pregnant women on the beach. There's teenagers over here playing together, throwing a ball. There's uh, like people wrestling over here. There's like grown men playing soccer on the beach, and like just like all types of different dynamics. And everyone's happy. Everyone's having a great and like, don't get me wrong, they're on a beach, but contrast that to some experiences that I would have on a beach in, say, Florida, for instance. And I look around, and I've had this experience, and every person is on a phone. Every like a group of kids, they're just like head down. And I'm not saying like this is a utopia, like, but I do notice there is other places that I experience in the world that have a deeper love of life. and living. And that's why we were talking before we press record about the food. They have a passion and a care for their bodies and what they feed them. And so it's like, all these things. I'm not saying like I actually absolutely love America and the American ideals. And I just think it has kind of been sidetracked, captured by this work your life away, accumulate all these things path that so many people are caught in. And the combination of that and the financial systems that's designed to keep people poor, it's designed to extract resources from people. And so there, you put those two things together, you will always be working to keep your head above water. And I'm not saying to like not go after your dreams and like not have a good life for yourself. I actually really believe in that too. But it's the getting lost in it, the devoting one's whole existence to material success misses the point 10 out of 10 times. And we know that because there's been plenty of end of life studies that we'll talk about, and we'll interview people, and they never say, I wish I had another boat, or I wish I had another $1 million in my account. They would say, no, I would trade everything that's in my account right now for another day with my grandchildren, or I would give it all to just have my wife here again with me and one more kiss. And I get goosebumps. And when I think about those things, and I'm just so grateful to have even a fraction of that realization at this part of my life, because now I choose to live life in alignment with that I don't have those regrets. And part of that is just being present with the things that matter the most.
It'd be
Yeah.
interesting to look at America collectively, over time, on how did we end up this way? Like, where did this obsession
Yeah.
with materialism
Yeah.
or being completely in your head the whole time,
Yeah.
which I find that US is very mental,
Mhm.
and stuck in your head, which is not good because your mind is not very wise, people. It's
Mhm.
your heart, it's your body that has so much more wisdom to offer.
Mhm.
But the mind blocks that
Mhm.
connection.
Mhm.
And I've been thinking a lot about this because I'm creating an online group program on connecting to your intuition.
Mm.
And so the biggest obstacle to that is that monkey mind.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think people are realizing, yes, I have a problem, because there's so much anxiety and depression, which is all mental issues, by the way.
Mhm.
And, but they don't have the tools or the knowledge to clear their mind. I mean, I think they know, yes, meditation is good and mindfulness is good.
Mhm.
But everything is set up to not promote that, right?
Yeah. I have endless theories and ideas on all this. It's probably like a 10 episode series, but yeah.
But
Yeah.
you can come back on and we can talk about this because I think this is important. This is
It
really
is.
important for us to make the connections and see the patterns, because if we don't, we end up just in circles going nowhere.
Yeah, I fully agree. I fully agree. And um I think right now, I don't know, maybe I'm just like so optimistic about things that I see it this way, but I see so many more people waking up to this reality and starting to kind of navigate it in their own way and face it. And so uh, we're kind of at this culmination point where people are being squeezed financially. They have no more time to give. I know this well because I was at that
Mm-hmm.
point. I had no more time to give. They can't work anymore. They can't their bodies can't take anymore. And what we're seeing now, as I was saying at the beginning of the podcast as well, just the layering on of the barrage of attacks on people's physical, mental, emotional. It's coming from all angles, and so it's really hard to point to one thing and say, "Oh, this is the reason why people are this way." No, it's actually been happening systematically over time. And we could point to so many different groups and reasons, and this corporation and this government and whatever, but it's a system of misaligned incentives that incentivize consumption, and consumption at all costs. So that means we extract as much as we can. That's what, in a lot of ways, corporations and companies do, is they try to extract as much as they can from the assets that they have for their shareholders. And that's the design of it. It's not bad or good. It's a neutral thing. But if we as a civilization, as a society, as a collective decide that that's actually not working anymore, then we have to do something to create a better model that's in service. And it takes into account not just the financial impact, but every downstream impact of that. Like, okay, are my employees happy? Are we treating the earth well, at least neutrally, let alone like a company leaving it better than when they found it? Because that would cost more money. And if the goal and outcome is money, and that's on the pedestal, then that's where all of the decisions are going to point towards. And everything else that is in conflict with that or has tension with that will not matter. It'll fall away. And so I think that the only way to get there is for, this is kind of my just theory on life, on what this whole collective is that we're all a bunch of individuals and we're all trying to figure out this life. We're all doing our best, honestly, to figure it out. We're doing the best within the framework that we're in. And the best thing we can do is to start taking, excuse me, best thing we do is to start taking individual responsibility for our own kingdom, our inner kingdom, and the kingdom of the small circle around that which we touch, the people and what we do. And I think we can have so much more impact than people actually give themselves credit for it. And it leads to, if people don't think they can make a difference, it leads to hopelessness and inaction. And in fact, people have an enormous amount of power, both for their own experience of life, but also in the impact they can have on others. I used to do this practice to, I would just put on a smile and I would walk around and I would just genuinely wish happiness for strangers. And I didn't know them. I didn't know what their story was. Just like walking around, I could be driving. I could see someone over there on a bench and I just genuinely wish the best for them. It was like an early version of prayer for me before I really understood what that was. And what I noticed was my body would light up when I did that. I would light up in that service. And this is the funny part, is anytime someone would see me in that state of light, they would catch it as well. That was the real contagion, is this pure joy, because it stands out with a lot of people that are miserable and like distracted. And so it was instantly contagious. And we all have that power, both for ourselves, but also for anyone that we touch.
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree. We have so much power being a human on this planet today. We get to say what happens. If we're not happy with what's happening, we get to change it and put that intention out. And, how do you do that? There's, in shamanism, you create a ceremony.
Mm-hmm.
say there's a list of things you'd like to happen. And I don't just do this for myself. I do this for humanity, the
Mhm.
planet. I don't
Yeah.
think you're limited. Don't limit yourself.
Mhm.
If you have goals and aspirations for life, on the planet, you can add that to the list.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and yeah, it's what's happening in the U.S. is so complex, and I find when I visit other countries, it's so different. And I feel like there's so much focus on us for some reason. And the
Mhm.
focus is interesting because um, we're important somehow.
Mhm.
I'm not saying we're the most important country. We're definitely not the best, but there's something going on that's very important here.
Mhm.
And it's a threat to others, other
Mhm.
countries, or the elite, or whoever you want to call them. So we need to get it together, but I think that we are going to.
Well,
I think we're going to.
I believe we are
Yeah,
wholeheartedly. We
we're getting there already.
yeah,
Yeah,
and I think that America has these roots that are so deep, that roots in freedom, roots in sovereignty, roots in independence. And I think no matter what, like, that still runs through the soil and like the people that live there, even if it's suppressed, and I think it really is there. And that is what a lot of other countries, uh they are, I don't say jealous, what's the word I'm looking for, they're
admire.
inspired and admire. Yeah, thank you.
Hmm.
They admire about us because, yeah, all countries have their own things and some problems that we wouldn't want. And so we all kind of have our own things we're working through. And part of it is like America was held up with this false dream that became a tagline. And it was like the perfect manicured lawn and the white picket fence and all these toys and things and two cars in the garage and whatever. And it kept, it's almost like when you cast a person in a certain light, is like America got cast as like the material example of perfection for a while post World War II, and like all the way through really now, it's still, we're looked at as that way. And it's almost like we're having to keep up with that perception, is like, oh, we just have to keep having more things and bigger and
You got to keep the economy going.
yeah, you got to keep consuming and eating
You need
plastic.
the nice cars and the golf
Yeah.
carts. Around where I live, it's like golf carts
Mhm.
and boats and all the toys.
Yeah, and the sad reality of it is, yes, this is a belief, but I also think it's pretty darn true. It doesn't actually make anyone happy. It just extracts the thing that would make them happy from them, which is their time, their attention, and their resources. The things that they gave up to have that thing, they actually could have had much more fulfillment in life had they not been on that path to consume and consume and consume and consume. And I think there's something baked into our DNA that knows that we are of the earth and that we are stewards of the earth. As much as it's programmed out of us really hard, I think it's baked into our DNA. And so there's something sickening about us treating Mother Earth the way that we do, and polluting the waters and the airs. And I think that is tied into I'm going a little psychosomatic and collective consciousness here, but like it's tied into the sickening of the population. Is like there's a part of us that knows like we're not doing the right thing, like we're not doing it. And a being can only hold that much like dysregulation for so long. Like I was so split, I was so torn, this inner world and outer world, and it causes dis-ease in the body. Mhm.
Yes, we are human beings, not human doings.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
Chris, we got a few more minutes, and I wanted to ask you how, what kind of projects and are you working on right now, and how can people contact you?
Yes, thank you so much. The best way to contact me is chrismarhefka.com. It's my personal site. It has all the projects that I'm working on. Depending on when this episode comes out, I have a series of retreats that I lead. I have one in the wilderness in October. I have one in Austin, Texas in April. If people are interested in that, they can check out at chrismarhefka.com. I also have a program that I'm launching in November, and it's actually specifically designed. This is funny. It's specifically designed to help people gain their time and attention back. The promise is at the end of 6 weeks, you'll have gained 5 free hours to do whatever you want with. Learn to play the guitar, spend time with your children, like take a walk, whatever. So 5 hours a week guaranteed at the end of the 6 weeks. And basically I'm teaching people a lot of the things that I learned when I had to gain my time back and my life back. Because the way I see it, there's so many people out there that are on the same path I was, and they just don't have any more time to give. They have no more attention to put on anything else. And so, just teaching people some really practical tools. That'll be launched in November. What else? I think that's good for now.
Oh, good. Well,
Yeah.
thank you, Chris, for being on the show. It was really fun talking with you. It's nice to talk to someone who can look at the big picture too, because I enjoy looking at the big picture, and we're all part of it. We're all part of that big picture. So we need to understand what's going on there and with ourselves within it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me on. It was a pleasure. Obviously, we could keep talking for hours and hours in any which one direction, but I appreciate the conversation, allowing me to share my stories, and I just hope it's helpful for anyone who's listening.